Okay, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I can't get this thing out of my head. I woke up and I'm like, I really have to deal with this. Just bought this new Miller welder, my second one. You know, the last one lasted about 10 years, which was okay. But in doing this project, I needed to have something that was top-notch. So I bought the welder, and my welding mechanic said, this welder I should just run 030 wire, which is 30 thousandths thick wire. Let me find a little chunk of that wire, and I can show you, because there's a bunch of chunks laying around. You can see it's, you know, not much thicker than a beard hair or so. So it's fairly thin material. And what's been happening is, oh, and let me go ahead and swing us around here. It's down inside the welder, and this is, you know, an incredible invention. Basically, the spool of wire rotates, and I would start this thing up. It's 3 in the morning, so I have to kind of be quiet for the neighbors. And it comes in through here, and this little motor here rotates around, and it feeds the wire into a tube right here, and then through the line and all the way out to the other end where the gun is. And so then the wire just kind of comes up the center of the pipe, and you're able to weld without actually feeding anything into it, because it's an automatic feed. And that's the genius of a MIG welder. Now, what's happened here is this wire is so thin that it continues to bundle up right in here, right where it makes contact with this. So I talked to my welder guy, and he said, well, what you have to do is you have to have your receiver, which is this part right in here, very, very close to the wheel, as close to the wheel as you can possibly get it. And by the way, this little part here drops down and locks in, and you can see there's about a 1-inch gap there. Now, I don't get it. Miller has these receiver tubes that has about a 1/2 inch gap right there. This is basically the tube that goes inside of that area, and so there's a 1/2 inch outside of there of gap, and the wire just continues to bundle up right in this area here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a little adapter that brings my wire, or brings my receiver right next to the wheel here, and so it doesn't allow for any gap, which means hopefully that it's not going to bundle up. Now, I'm probably going to spend a couple hours on this, and I don't know if it's going to work or not, but you know, hey, stay with me, we'll play with this one. Okay, so we're going to work on the little south end here, my original lathe, mostly because it's quiet, and it's still about 3:15, 3:30. It's 3:30 in the morning. So and we live in a really quiet area, so I really have to be respectful for the neighbors and not crank up a bunch of noise at this time of the morning. So the south end is fairly quiet. Yeah, you know, it's going to make a little bit of noise, but not that big a deal. And we're going to run some aluminum, which even is quieter. You know, it doesn't have that squeal effect that you get in steel or brass or any other materials. So, and it looks to me like we're going to have, you know, a couple of inches of material. But maybe I'll just make it just a little bit longer, just for fun. So, probably the first part of this project is we need to turn something that's going to fit over the top of this nut, because it's a standard nut, and if this is going to work, then we want to be able to take it off of this one and put it on the next one, because these things do tend to wear out on a regular basis, and so we want to just be able to slide it off, put it on the next one. So just a slight pressure fit with maybe a little set screw or something, just kind of hold it in place. And we're going to go out beyond there by about, oh, I don't know, half an inch or so, and bring this to a really tight point so that it comes right into that wheel, and there's no room between the wheel and where the wire goes into this feed. So the first part of this project is let's bring it down to size, and we're going to leave enough material here on the outside to give us a set screw, or two, possibly two, and then we'll go ahead and drill the hole, and the hole is going to be at probably about, oh, I don't know, 30, 35, somewhere between 30 and 35 thousandths, and I haven't figured that out exactly yet. We're going to use the measurement of the other end of this, which is comes out, the wire comes out here at the gun, and then there's a little copper tip that goes on there, and those are drilled at a specific size, so I'm going to use that size as our standard. So and we're going to run this by hand because my automatic feed is pretty noisy, and again, just trying to be conscious of the neighbors. So, and it's not that big a deal to run by hand, especially with aluminum, because it's such forgiving material. And we'll just take it all the way in. Of course, we're going to be making it a lot thicker, or a lot longer than it needs to be, but better that than end up being too short at the other end. And the aluminum, you can see, just peels off there like nobody's business. Even on a small lathe like this, which sometimes is a problem because this thing doesn't have a whole lot of power. And it also turns out that this lathe has a taper attachment to it, so we can put that taper attachment into play later on when we start to do the nozzle for this. Right now we're just kind of hogging out metal. Take a measurement from with my veneers, and the veneers really aren't accurate, but they're accurate enough, at least for getting a general measurement. Later on we'll come in and really do a tight measurement, but this gets me down to where I think I want to be. I got a couple more passes here before we have to even start thinking about it. That probably is going to be what we want. Yeah, and that's going to give us about a 1/4 inch on either side to run a little set screw in there. And you know, the set screw doesn't have to hold anything tight. It It just wants to snug things down so that it stays in place. So at this point, I think we want to do, this wants to be the nozzle in, because the drill is not, it's not going to be real strong. It's a very thin drill. And so I want the beginning part of the drill, because the drill, as it goes into the material, it's going to want to walk a little bit because it's so thin. And so I think what I want to do is get that drill hole in dead center in this, so that when it goes into the machine, it's just dead center with that piece. So we'll do the nozzle in first, and then we'll come in and flip this thing over and do the attachment to that brass nut. Okay. So what I have to do is figure out the size of the drill bit. Now, I don't even know if you can see this close, but let's bring this in a little closer. There is my hole, 030, and this is a welding tip, and they make it out of copper because copper holds up under the heat. So what I have to do is go find a drill bit that size, and we'll start to drill a hole in that. So already we've got a problem here, and I kind of figured that this was going to happen. I'm using a number 80, no, it's number 61 drill bit, and it won't fit in the chuck. So what we have to do is I have to go into my jewelry part of my studio, find a very small chuck that will grab this and put it in this chuck. So then I'll have chuck, and drill bit. So I'll be back in a minute. Okay, first thing we want to do, we face this off so it's nice and square. And the first thing we want to do is come in with a center and cut a hole, or just cut a little mark. I mean, it really has to be a small one. Just barely kissing it, just to set an exact center so that that drill bit doesn't drift so much, especially in the beginning because it's such a small drill bit. So take the center out, and we're going to find my drill head. So I got this out of my jewelry, and it's an old Fordham, and I basically kind of took it apart, and I've got it's kind of a long distance from one thing to the next. I think it's going to work though, as long as I get it in so that this little notch doesn't hit the chuck. Snug it down. No point in going real tight. And we're looking real good. So I think we can just... Now see how that drill bit just kind of wanders just a little bit? So we're not quite on center for some reason. And I'm thinking it's possible that the actual drill is just slightly off, because, you know, the way that they set it up. Ah, look at that. Now that's perfect. So I just rotated the main drill a little bit and then kind of tweak things back in. So now we'll go ahead and see if we can just start this thing. We have to just do it very... See how it kind of started to jump there again? I think what I want to do is break this down as far as it'll go. Alright, let's see if we can just kind of work our way in very slowly until we get it to... Sometimes if you just let it sit there and kind of wander, that's a little bit better. You let it wander, the spring tension will kind of center it. It's a little off, but not too bad. I mean, you know, we're looking at 3 or 5 thousandths maybe. And so at this point we're moving right into, can you see it? We'll go ahead, let's move that wrench. Now we can just drill right into the aluminum, clearing the chips on a regular basis, because of course aluminum tends to jam up. Sure enough, it jammed up right away. Alright, no, it's good. Oop. There it goes. We just have to be very careful with it, very slow. Okay, we got about 3/8 of an inch of drill in there, so I think that's going to be plenty. Because we're going to come in from the back side with a little bit larger drill bit, because remember the wire goes in this way, and we've got to, you know, make space for the wire to go. Oh, let's test it with some water. Little piece of broken off piece of wire. It's going to go in just beautifully. Yep, excellent. So at this point we're going to set up a taper so that this thing will kind of just come right into a real tight bond, or I mean tight connection. Oops. Let's take our drill bit out. And since this is such a small bit and it goes in this little 60 to 80 kit, I'm going to take it directly back and put it back where it belongs, because otherwise it'll get lost immediately. Okay, and it looks like our nozzle needs to be at a fairly steep angle. So I think we can pull this angle off just by changing the compound rest angle. And I'm just going to guess, because hey, this is all experimental anyhow. Rotate this around. And we can lock it into place. Let's get it in a little further. There we go. And go ahead and just start trimming back. I'm thinking it needs to be a little bit more of an angle. Ooh. Okay, back up. Well, that mistake just kind of caused it to jump a little bit, so And I really want that center to be directly full on center. So I think what I need to do is go ahead and indicate. We'll set the indicator up here. Oops. Oh, that's not going to exactly work. There we go. Tighten it up. Alright, now let's spin it and see what we got. Yeah, we're out about 3 thousandths. So I'm thinking we can just, tap it back into place here. Loosen our chuck up a little bit. See if we can get this thing to kind of kick back. Alright. Okay, we're at about 1.5, and I think that's about as good as it's going to get. Tighten her up. Yeah. That's pretty good. Okay. Now, let's see how she spins this point. Ah, fairly true. Alright, we're going to take just a little bit more of an angle off of this. Very carefully, because obviously this metal moves around very easy. Just a little bit at a time. I want to keep this point as accurate as possible. It'd be nice to have a sharp tool bit, of course, but since it is only, what is it, about 4 o'clock in the morning, I don't dare crank up that grinder, so we're going to just leave it like it is and only cut from one angle, because that back angle just doesn't cut. So this one works pretty good. Let's come back and let's go forward. Come back. There we go. I bottomed out on the cross feed. I keep forgetting this thing doesn't have much distance. Let's see, there's our distance right there. I'm used to the bigger lathe. The crossbead's probably got about 6 or 8 inches. This thing's got like 2.5. Now this old lathe was built 2 months before I was born. And I was born in 1948 in March, or 2 months after I was born. It was, and the amazing thing is that when I first bought the lathe, there was a couple of parts missing, and I needed to replace them, and I couldn't seem to find them on eBay, and I couldn't find them anywhere. Nowadays, you know, eBay's a little more active, and you can find almost anything. But in those early days, and I've had this lathe for 20 years now, you couldn't find parts. And so I thought, well, you know, I'll call South Bend and see what they've got. Maybe they've got some, you know, some old parts laying on a shelf somewhere. And I can't remember what I needed. I think I needed a gear. You know, I had a couple of gears worn out or something. I can't remember. Anyhow, so I contacted South Bend, and this lady answers. You know, somebody actually answers the telephone, which is pretty astounding. Of course, that was 20 years ago, so answering the telephone was normal. And she says, well, what's the number of the lathe? You know, I says, I need such and such. And she says, well, what's the number of the lathe? And so I give her the model number. And she says, no, what's the serial number? And I go, oh. So I, you know, go search it out and figure out where it's at. And I give her the serial number. And she looks it up. And I know at that point she's not looking it up because I'm hearing pages rattle. She's not looking it up in a computer. She's looking it up in some files somewhere. And she finds this lathe. And she names off the owners of this lathe for the past 60-something years. She said, oh yeah, such and such bought it back in 1948. They bought it brand new and they used it for da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, I can't believe it. They had files on this lathe from all the way back from when they sold it. And that's pretty astounding. And there was like 9 owners. And each one of them ended up contacting South Bend to buy a part. And so they would mark it down in some file somewhere and put it away. And so she asked me my name and my address, and I got put on the list for as an owner of this South Bend lathe. And that's how I found out when the lathe was made, June of 1948. Now this is an old flat belt lathe, and it just keeps running. You know, the gears, the drive gears for the carriage are pretty worn out, and it makes a lot of noise. And one of these days I'm probably going to replace them. I just haven't quite gotten around to it yet. Let's see, back up a little bit. I think this might just be about the last pass here. That looks pretty good. Okay, so we've got We've got our cone tapered in, and now we want to probably take off a bit of material here because this is a fairly small space. But you know, at this point, I think what I need to do is measure how far back we're going to go. Okay, so our distance is going to be less than the actual cone itself, but you know, that's not that big a deal. So I think what I need to do at this point, because that bit is so ragged, we're going to have to change out the bit. Well, let me mark myself. And this is kind of a little trick that I've done over the years. Is the old bit, I just put a little mark on the piece of metal, and that way I know where the new bit's going to go, and it'll be all centered and ready to go. Go see if I can find a nice sharp bit. Well, sharp enough. It's not exactly pristine, but at the same time, as I said, I don't want to crank up my grinder, because this old barn is pretty much open to the open air, and the noise travels. We're in a pretty quiet little area. So now what we want to do is we're going to come in just before that. This is all kind of a guess right here, but an educated guess. See what that looks like. I'd say it's pretty close. So, and I think we'll go ahead and set a stop here, and I got this little piece of aluminum that I might have got that at a garage sale. But I've had it so long I can't remember. But it works at as a stop, and we'll just kind of come in, and we'll trim this thing down. Because we really don't need that much material out there. And remember, we're building a nozzle. And also, we need a place to grab it when we turn this thing around. Okay, and basically this piece of wire is going to fit inside of that, and the wire is, we've got our distance, the wire is 160 thousandths, so we can come in a little bit further. So the wire is going to be that thick, and it's going to go on the inside of this little sleeve right here. So I would say, you know, we got a ways we can go, and still have enough material. Alright, that should do the trick. Square up that inside edge a little bit. And that's pretty much going to get us where we want to go. So at this point we're going to spin this thing around. And we know that this little brass nut is going to fit from about right here. Let's see if I can get a good view for you. It's going to fit from right here over to here. So not much of a nut. We're looking at maybe this much here, and we'll drill a couple of set screws in there. But at this point we could probably just trim off that the slug